Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagano. We are back here in Studio 130 for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of Iowa's favorite conservative podcast. I'm joined here in studio today with John Hendrickson and Chris Ingstad, and we are going to go over election results today. Gentlemen, are you ready?
Yes.
Good.
Yep.
Good. Before we get rolling, I forgot to do this yesterday, John, but I'm going to start doing it more often, reminding everyone to like and subscribe the podcast, assuming that you do actually like and subscribe to things we're going to talk about today. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Google. I don't know if they still do, but we're on it. We're on all of them. We're on YouTube. We're on Rumble. If I remember to upload it to Rumble, sometimes I forget and just do the YouTube. but we're wherever you need to find us. So. John, you're just, you love it. You're a star. Yeah. You're who the people come in to see. You know that, right? No. Okay. Well, all right. Well, very good. So first things first, by way of, we have one administrative matter that we need to take care of before we move on any further. John has been very frustrated for a long time, at least as long as I've been with ITR, that you don't get a I voted sticker.
Yes. Yeah.
On election day. Tell us about that and what came of that?
Well, I've noticed the last several election cycles, whether it's been here in the Des Moines area or when I was in Southeast Iowa, that there was no longer election stickers, I voted stickers being handed out, and which I thought was unfortunate. So I mentioned that yesterday, and one of our colleagues was kind enough to give me her I voted sticker this morning. So
I just got to tell you guys, Polk City still believes in America.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I'm disappointed that you're not wearing it, John.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to put it in my collection.
Oh, good. I think that's good.
This is one of the last remaining I voted stickers in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So yesterday, John and I went through some of what the high points are that were on the ballot yesterday. And we're going to just come back and kind of click through some of that.
Sure.
So nationally, there were several elections that were going on. You had Virginia legislative races. You had governor's races in Kentucky, Mississippi, and I think those are the only two. Maybe one other. At least those are the ones that were
competitive, worth watching.
And then the ballot measures in Ohio, that were the ones that most people, I think on balance, John, tell me if you think I'm wrong. It wasn't a great night for conservatives, but it wasn't probably as bad as the national media would have us believe.
No, I think that's a good assessment.
So Andy Beshear, the Democrat governor of Kentucky, was reelected, seems to have positioned himself fairly or unfairly as more of a moderate. Family name matters. So he was reelected. Tate Reeves, conservative governor of Mississippi, who has done a lot on tax policy, was.
Yeah.
I think Democrats wanted us to believe that was going to be a race, but in the end really wasn't. He was reelected. And then the Ohio, you had those ballot measures. One was on abortion rights and then legalization of marijuana. Those both passed. I don't know. We haven't paid a lot of time on those issues, but I think specifically the abortion rights one continues to be an issue that Republicans and conservatives have not figured out how to counter message that from the Democrats. So
I think that's right. And also, as we're talking this morning, that there's a lot of local things that went into each of these races that we don't fully understand. So.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to find that out as we move on to some of the local elections here in Iowa, is that if you're not on the ground in a community or in a state, it's hard to really get a picture for what people are talking about and thinking about.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to mention that.
Yeah, but I want you to talk about this because there was really one, I think, important taxpayer ballot measure that was on the ballot last night.
Yeah.
So in Colorado.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
What was that, John?
Yeah, it was Colorado Proposition H, and basically it was a very confusing proposition, but basically what it did was promise property tax relief in exchange for basically revising their TABOR, Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and the argument was that it would lift the spending cap to increase funding for public education, and it was supported by their Democratic governor, and it actually was defeated in a landslide.
Pretty sound.
Yeah, 60.2% voted no, 39.8 voted for it. So it's an important taxpayer
John,
protection.
I think you covered this pretty well yesterday, but again, if folks didn't listen to that one, to summarize what you just said, taxpayers were essentially offered a short-term payoff to give up a really important and long-standing taxpayer protection.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think voters in Colorado saw through that and said no thanks.
And I think this, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think this serves as a lesson for us in Iowa, as well as other states, where beware of people promising property tax relief and increasing state spending at the same time, because oftentimes it's not going to work.
It will be very.
And so this was a fine example of a smokescreen that they tried to get through.
In almost every instance, the relief you actually feel will be very short-lived.
Yes.
And soon enough, for many different reasons, the local governments will push right through that. You'll no longer have property tax relief, and you've given up something important at the state level.
Yeah.
So,
and TABOR has returned billions back to Colorado taxpayers.
Yeah. No, that's good, and I think that's a really good point to make, John. And kudos to the voters of Colorado for seeing through that and understanding it. Not a conservative bastion either. I mean, they want their property tax protection, so that's great. So turning to Iowa, there was a lot on the ballot, and it's really hard to go through all of it. As we said yesterday, the big race was going to be the Des Moines mayor's race, which Connie Boesen, it was a matchup of two city council members running for mayor. Connie Boesen won that, not by a couple percentage points. It wasn't a blowout. Mm-hmm. However, it was highly well-funded, both sides on TV. I think Mandelbaum positioned himself as the more activist, progressive, far-left candidate, and lost to Connie Boesen. So I think, I don't know, I have several thoughts on that. If the Democrats and the progressives want to say that abortion rights were on the ballot across the country and they won, right? Well, this Des Moines mayor's race seemed to be litigated on who could go the furthest left on abortion, and yet the one that didn't end up winning. So I don't know, maybe that even in a place like Des Moines, which is very liberal, that didn't seem to work out. But I could be drawing too many conclusions into that, but it certainly was the focus of the TV ad part of that campaign. So I also saw another one that Josh Mandelbaum was very frustrated that there were mailers that said that he wanted to raise utility rates. I don't know if you saw that, John, or we talked about it a little bit.
I did not see that,
he's a climate activist, and many of those things do actually increase utility rates.
Yeah.
He didn't seem to want to be called out on that. So anyway, congratulations to Mayor-elect Boesen. I mean, all these are unofficial, but what we focused on organizationally was a lot of the bond measures that were on the ballot, because these really do have a tremendous impact on property taxes, mm-hmm. right? So,
well, I mean, not if you listen to the local officials.
Well, yeah, that's right. They're always tax neutral, right? They never, we just get to bond all this money, and there's never really any real impact to that, right? Anything jump out at either of you, or on the bond election results?
Well, and I could be wrong on this, but this cycle.
This is twice John has admitted he might be wrong today.
Yeah,
Let's see if he's feeling okay.
Yeah, I haven't had enough coffee yet.
Oh, okay.
So. Yeah. But it just seems that this cycle there was more people paying attention to some of these issues. And I don't know if that's an accurate assessment, but just from the what I've seen in the opinion pages across the state and on Channel 8 News, as well as just talking to people. I mean, I received quite a few emails right before the election from a lot of people asking me about some of these bonding issues, but I mean even just sampling local newspapers on the opinion pages, lots of letters to the editor going both for and against. So it seemed like there was a lot of engagement on these projects, and that's one, I guess, takeaway that I have.
I mean, just like from a real rough estimate, I think we'll have an article
we are
recapping statewide. Look, if you live in Cedar Rapids, you're not tuning into our podcast to see how the Cedar Rapids School District measure went, right? You know that. It went down. But we'll try to recap statewide some of the data. And if our initial sort of review of that is correct, Chris, literally half of the bond issues passed last night.
Right.
And half of them failed. And so I think what that says is community by community, people, citizens, probably dug into the information a little bit, listened to what their elected officials were saying, and made up their own minds. Right? Literally half of them like, you know what, we agree, we want this new thing, go for it. And the other half said, we don't need it, or that's too expensive, or, try again later with a scaled back plan. And frankly, that's probably how it should work. Like we should be encouraged that folks weighed in and thought, if this were just, clearly one direction or the other, maybe we're just being mindless. But I think this shows that Iowans are likely discerning voters.
Well, I think that's true. And one example I think is in Greene County, which I believe they passed their.
No, it didn't. It failed, John.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
There was one jail that passed.
I think only one of them.
Okay. And
no, the Greene County. Go ahead though. Finish your point.
But I thought that one was passed. Well, then that makes my point wrong.
No, you're right. Greene County was the one that passed. 63%. Yes,
okay.
It needs 60 to pass. Got 63. You are right. I take that back. I'm sorry. So your point stands, and it's
I thought they did a good job of whether one agrees with it or not, but making their case of why they needed that new law enforcement jail center. And so I thought in some cases, some of these local governments did do a good job of trying to justify it, why it was needed. And in some cases, it's a sad reflection, but there is rising crime, and a lot of these communities they need more room, and they're paying more to outsource prisoners as a result, and that also creates some problems for public safety when you do that. So
I think that's right. I think coming back to the point that voters in these communities seem to be paying attention. Obviously, turnout is low in these kind of elections. Probably you're going to get 25-30% turnout at
Again,
best.
we'll
recap
recap that when all that's available.
We've got good people working on that right now. But
meanwhile, three of us sit here.
And we just sit here and drink coffee and talk about it. But I noticed some of these. Obviously, Cedar Rapids School District bond that went down, and it went down pretty hard. So clearly, the folks there either don't want the project or need it to be revised. And Cedar Rapids Schools is not a growing district. It's actually slowly declining, and they wanted $220 million to build a new middle school and so on and so forth. So voters clearly made up their mind. But there's other ones where you had a declining enrollment district, and yet their measure passed, and they decided they wanted that, and the community passed by a lot. I think there's other places where you have rapidly growing communities that need to build at some point. Places like ADM and North Polk and Waukee, where at some point you've got to find a place to put these kids. And so those pass. I guess where I'm coming back to is I still have a lot of faith in the voters of this state when given the information and knowing when the election is, like the first Tuesday in November, that they'll make good decisions about what is best for their community, and they can have an honest conversation about it, whether it's about the jail or anything else.
Quite honestly, that is the goal of our ITR local initiative, is not to try to sway voters on most of these elections. We just want to give them information. We want to give them objective information and let them make up their own minds.
That's right.
And we'd like to give them 360 degrees of objective information, not just a single data point that would sort of point you towards something, and then you're informed, and you can decide if you want what you're being offered or not.
But we saw that around the state. We saw our ITR local information being used and consumed and shared. And
who else saw it, Chris? Some local officials.
That's right.
And I got a
Here we go.
One of them wrote us yesterday that we were misrepresenting information, and literally all of that information on there is from biased sources like the state of Iowa and the United States Census Bureau, right?
Which we clearly link to the sources for the data on the page.
And he thought it was unfair that we were talking about how many more dollars in property taxes his school district was taking. He thought we should only talk about the rate. And we had some colorful terms for this yesterday afternoon, but I guess I would just ask voters in his district, do you care what the rate is, or do you care how many dollars they're taking? Because I got news for that district. You had the exact same number of students 10 years ago as you do now, but you are now collecting almost double the property taxes. You went from 4 million to just shy of 8 in property taxes. So, way to go for managing that, you guys. I mean, and again, like your voters can decide if they're happy with that or not.
Right.
But don't say that we're misrepresenting data because we point out to voters just how many dollars you're taking from them.
Well, and if you know what you get to do, if you focus only on the rate and not the valuations, the amount collected, then you get to say things like it's revenue neutral, it's tax neutral. You get to make the statement that this doesn't raise your property taxes,
we know,
even though we all instinctively know that it does.
We also know that most of that revenue neutral claim is because they just paid the last thing off, and so they rush out right away. Because goodness, if you waited a year, folks would see their property taxes actually go down and then wonder why you're raising it. So they're always ready to put that next thing forward.
You know that big car payment that you were sick of making, but you did month over month, and you finally paid it off?
Yes.
You were tired of paying it. It was too much. And as soon as you pay it off, you go out and buy a brand new car.
That's how a lot of these local governments are operating.
But it's not new spending. I mean, it's the same analogy, right? But they want to have it that way.
Guys, it can't. You were telling us that you were taking on $8 million or $19 million or $43 million if you want to build on a rec center. You were telling us you're taking on that new debt that we're going to have to pay back, and you're trying to tell us it's not going to have an impact. I mean, that's misrepresenting, Chris.
That's right. That's right. Well, good. We are going to have more to say on this. Like I said, we have top people working on election analysis right now, and we're going to continue to look at it. And beyond that, how can we make the process better? How can we improve
We've got ideas
the
for that
information
too.
flow? How can we improve election night reporting so that folks have more information? That's the whole point here, is how can the voters out there get their hands on all of this? So
I just have one more take.
Please, John.
Not on the bonding, but I think one issue of concern is, and I don't know how it went statewide, but at least here in central Iowa, is the school board elections. And there was many progressives, if you want to call them that.
Well, the newspapers have called them that,
yes,
so I think it's safe to do
and
so.
So I think this is very concerning, and so the cultural war is real out there, and I mean, I think conservatives are going to have to get more serious in trying to get.
You know what? Then all the more reason to have a robust school choice program, because if the media is going ahead and going to report that school districts are going to be led in one very sort of unified partisan manner. That essentially would exclude the sort of values or the input of basically half the community, then let's allow those folks to have another choice, and now we do.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
You have proven the need for this.
Yeah, and I think too, it's voters are going to have to decide what they want, and if they want, unrestricted access to pornography in the school library, they can do that.
The legislature, thankfully.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe that's why conservatives don't engage. Maybe they know that if it gets real bad, the legislature will come in and be the adults in the room on this. But I do think the issue of the books available, I use that term loosely, in the libraries, I think that helped. And again, with these school board races, it's a lot about turnout. I think it's not that they went out and won the persuasion war over that. I think they used the issue to gin up support among progressive voters to make sure they get out and vote. And I'm not sure that it worked the same on the conservative side. So for better, for worse. But you're right, John. It's clearly the left has chosen to make local elections where they're going to go try and get wins, because they're not getting them at the state level, and they're organized and they're funded, and it's just the reality right now. So we will see. So in addition to continuing to do analysis on these elections, it's going to turn to full-time caucus attention right now. And
Any news stories there, Chris?
yeah, no, besides the governor endorsing a candidate in the race, which would be interesting to see. I guess here's my short take on it. I am one that typically believes that endorsements don't matter at all. However, she's the governor, the popular conservative governor of Iowa, and I will be fascinated to watch, because I get the sense already that this is not simply an endorsement, but she is going to engage. She's going to campaign and use her whatever she has at her capacity to help try and move the needle. And that might matter, and it's something that we've got another 2.5 months to pay attention to.
Coming right up.
Any other hot takes on the caucuses? What's coming up? What to watch? What are you waiting for, John? Look, we got a long way to go. If anybody thinks this is set already, they're fooling themselves.
It's very fluid, and of course, there's another debate tonight.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's going to be interesting is the continual battle between DeSantis and Nikki Haley. I think that's going to be a interesting fight, and it's getting more heated.
Yeah, clearly, while there's an open lane for the front runner to just continue marching forward, while second and third place fight it out. Anyway, so good. Well, we're going to keep watching it. I know you have many thoughts, John, and we're going to put them together.
Yes, yeah.
And keep going. So good. Well, I think that's enough for a special Wednesday election recap edition of the ITR Live podcast. But thanks all for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, like we said at the outset. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.